These are the fatal flaws that I see in students doing both reading papers. Of course, when I say fatal, I don't mean that people literally have a heart attack and die, but I do mean that they are killing their grades. They are just chucking grades away. Let's go through them in order. Paper 1, question 1. Now, before I give you any advice, anything you did in the mock which worked, keep doing, even if it contradicts something I say. Yeah, because you've discovered what works for you. Keep doing that. But equally, reflect on your mocks and think, where did I do badly? I'll check out Mr. Salles' advice on that to see if I can improve. So, the examiners make question 1 absolutely easy. Why? They have the belief that if they give you an easy question to start with, you'll go, oh, this exam is going to be a doddle. I feel really good about myself. This is going to be a great day. However, everybody gets nearly full marks on this. So the average mark is 3.5 out of 4 nationally, which means even students who can barely read are still getting 3 marks. So, if the marks are so easy to get, this has a psychological problem, which is actually quite well known. Remember that feeling of joy that you had at the beginning of the exam? Well, as soon as you then get to a question that's difficult, you suddenly feel a sense of failure. I thought this exam was going to be easy. Now it's turning out to be really hard. I must be doing something wrong. I must be dumb. So, my top advice is to do question 1 last. Also, by the time you get to it, having done all the other questions, it will take you no time to answer the questions because you'll know the text inside out. So, food for thought for you there. If you find yourself running out of steam in the mocks, this could be a reason, that psychological problem, that the next questions become harder. Okay, question 2, 8 marks. On average, students get 4 out of 8 nationally, which is low. However, this is a skill of just quoting and explaining that you've been doing since primary school. Everyone ought to be able to get at least 6 marks on this, even the worst student in the class, because it's a skill you've practiced like forever. What students don't realise is that you get marks for the number of explanations. Teachers have a way around this. They teach you things like peel or petal or pretzel or any other kind of paragraph structure. And all those paragraph structures try to do is tell students in the class, look, if you write about an explanation of what the language implies, you're going to get the mark. So I'm going to give you paragraph structures that force you to write about the language. But there's absolutely no way on earth that you're going to be able to write 8 peel paragraphs. So what you often do is you end up having 2 explanations in your paragraph, so you need 4 paragraphs to get all 8 marks. Now, I don't know teachers who say, for that question, you have to write 4 paragraphs. Normally, students' heads will explode. So let me let you into a secret. The examiners do not mark you for paragraphing. They do not care about the paragraphs. Paragraphs help them read, yeah, but they don't have a set number of paragraphs in mind. These methods that teachers teach you are just there to help you get the marks so that nobody does badly. But a much easier method is to say, look, there are 8 marks, so I need 8 explanations. I might be able to get 8 quotes, which gives me 8 explanations, or I might have 4 quotes and 2 explanations each, or any combination of that. The examiners do not care how many paragraphs or how many quotations. They care about explanations, and very few students write enough explanations. Also, that's hard to do in the time limit, so you need to get on it. You need to go on the beat of bang. As soon as the starter pistol goes off, you're writing. Question 3. So I've read lots of question 3 answers, and this annoys me, but even though it's only 8 marks, same as question 2, you actually have to write more to get all 8 marks. That's just the way it is. Why? Because again, you need 8 explanations, but they're about the changes of focus. So the easiest way that students can correct this mistake is just to use that word 8 times. I'm going to write about 8 changes of focus. If you do that, you cannot do badly in this question. What is a change of focus? It's easy. Every text that you get will be written in paragraphs. Every paragraph will be a new change of focus. So now all you have to do to not fall into this trap is to come up with why that change of focus is there. This is not a guess what is in the examiner head question. It's this. The change of focus will make us think blah, 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 or it will make us feel blah, 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 or it will make us predict. Those are the three things that authors are always up to. So these three words will fit any single question 3 on paper 1 all the time. Focus, change of focus, that phrase will always fit every single time. How do you show that you dealt with the whole answer? Well, you've got a focus at the beginning, you've got a focus at the end, that's 2, and then you've got the 6 in the middle. If you haven't got enough time, you have 5 in the middle or 4 in the middle, whatever. But always make sure you do the beginning and the end because that shows you've read the whole text. You get higher marks. Okay, question 4. What a killer. 20 marks. That is an enormous number of marks. And to get the marks you need 20 explanations. Again, your teachers have probably taught you a variation of peel and petal and pretzel, and they've tried to work out by guesswork how many of those you would need to get a decent mark. And normally I expect they'd probably say about 4 paragraphs. Yeah, you'll do okay with that because there'll be 2 explanations probably in each paragraph. That's 16 marks. If you got all 16 marks, well, you're looking at least a grade 7. That would work. However, this is what happens in real life. When you're writing, you'll write some explanations which are rubbish, that don't score any marks. Luckily, the examiner doesn't say, that is rubbish, I'm going to mark you down. They say, that is rubbish, I'll just ignore it. So it doesn't count against you, other than it stopped you spending the time writing something that does score marks. If you're thinking simply in terms of paragraphs, they're big chunks of writing, and you're not going to get there. However, if you think, no, I've just got to write loads of explanations, obviously with quotes, it's much easier. The next explanation is really quick to write rather than the next paragraph, which is not quick. So if you think there's 20 marks, I've got to write 20 explanations. It's exactly the same ratio as question 2. So, you could have three explanations for 1 quote or 2 explanations for 1 quote. The examiner doesn't care. Or just 1 explanation for 1 quote. Again, the examiner doesn't care. They don't care how many quotes you use, but they do care how many explanations. Now, in theory, teachers will probably panic if you did 20 quotes with 20 explanations, because what they'd say is, well, that's not showing any depth. I disagree with that. Actually, if you show you can find 20 valuable quotes with 20 valuable explanations, that shows real depth. But you don't have to do that. You can say, well, I'm just going to do 5 quotations and I'll have 4 explanations for each one. I mean, that would be super hard, but you get what I mean? You can do it by going into greater depth on individual quotations if you want. Just don't make crap up. Don't write an explanation just to force another one out. If it doesn't present itself as something logical, don't do it. Move on to another quote. The other thing that I haven't put up here, but is actually really valuable, if you didn't get very good marks on question 4 in your mock, you should seriously consider doing paper 1 in reverse order, or at least doing question 5 and 4 in reverse order. Because 40 marks for question 5, 20 marks for question 4, that's 60 marks out of 80. That's 75% of your marks in the bag. Ka-ching, money in the bank. So even if you have a disaster with question 3, 2, you won't have a disaster with question 1, you've still already scored really highly because you've done the 20 marker, you've done the 40 marker, and these 4 marks are going to be just handed to you on a plate. So I would seriously consider doing it in reverse order. But remember, don't change what has worked for you in the mock. Yeah, my advice is no good to you unless I'm identifying an error that you've made. Right, let us get to question 1 of paper 2. Exactly the same psychological problem. It is designed to make you think the exam is easy. If that works for you, keep doing it. However, if you didn't like the fact that the exam got progressively harder and you became discouraged in the mock, For example, if you weren't writing right at the end, when the examiners said, now put down your pens, if that wasn't you, if you'd finished before the end of the mock, then don't start with that. Okay? If you get to the end of the exam and there's time left spare, you haven't tackled the exam properly. In the same way that if you're in a 10,000 metre race and you run 9,000 metres as hard as you can and then walk the last 1,000, you haven't done the race properly. You've cocked up the race. Don't cock up the race. You're going all the way to the very end, the last minute. You don't get any marks for sitting there feeling smug or any marks for looking around at your neighbours and thinking, sucker, you're still doing this and I've finished. The sucker is getting more marks than you. Don't waste a second. Question 2. So the biggest problem with question 2 is it asks you to look at 2 texts to compare them. That is cognitively very hard because you've got to read both flipping texts. Now, lots of students waste an enormous amount of time in the reading. So I would 100% not do question 2 second because it just eats into your time. It's worth only 8 marks and it sucks your time away. If you're reading both texts for the first time, it's really hard to assimilate it. However, if you do question 3 first, that's on one text. And so you will get to know that text super well. So I would 100% do question 3 first before question 2. Again, if in your exam you found doing it in that order, 2 and 3 worked, you're going to do that. But for me, absolutely no way on earth I'm doing question 2. And I've got a degree in English, by the way, which you probably know, but it's still much harder to do question 2 first than question 3. So I'm 100% question 3 first. Right, there are 12 marks. You're getting used to it now. That means there are 12 explanations. So you've just got to write them. Again, you can use peel or petal or pretzel or whatever else you've been taught. But if you're thinking in terms of how many paragraphs do I need to write, that's not going to fly. Yeah? Well, let's put it another way. If you're having 2 explanations in these, then I do know how many paragraphs you need because that tells you there's 12 marks, 2 explanations, you need 6 of them. If I say to you, you've got to write 6 paragraphs, your head will probably explode again because that's a load of writing. So I'm not telling you that. You just have to write 12 explanations. They don't have to be in separate paragraphs. They don't have to be about just a few quotes. You can have as many as 12 quotes. Again, you can have more than one explanation for each quote, so you can fiddle about with that. And that's brilliant in the exam because what you'll find is some quotations you can only say one thing about. Other quotations you'll naturally see 2 things to say about. And you don't have to sweat it. You don't have to say, oh, this one is not going to be appealed because I've only got one explanation. The examiner doesn't care. They just want to give you a mark for your explanation. So that is where students go wrong. With that question, they just think about the number of paragraphs. They never write enough. They don't get full marks or close to full marks. Now we come to paper 2, question 4. It's worth 16 marks. This is annoying because, again, it's a comparison, but the examiners don't care how many comparisons you make. So if you've been taught how many comparisons, that's holding you back. Also, if you've been taught to write in these paragraphs, which I'm sure you have, the examiners, again, don't care how many paragraphs you write. Couldn't care less. What they want, and this annoys me, is at least 16 explanations. This is the only question on the exam papers where the explanations doesn't match the number of marks at all times. So to get 16 marks, you often have to write more than 16 explanations. Don't worry, almost no one in the country gets 16 marks. You can get grade 9 on this with 14 marks. So 14 explanations. Again, that's a lot. You'll never get to 14 explanations if you think in terms of paragraphs. It's just really, really tough to do. You won't have time to write it. But hopefully you're getting the idea now. Mr. Salles has liberated my mind. I'm just going to write quote, explain, quote, explain, quote, explain, quote, explain. I'm going to get the marks. Or quote, explain, explain, quote, explain, 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 quote, explain, quote, explain, quote, explain, explain. You get the idea. You can mix it up. The examiners don't care about your paragraphs. However, make it easy to read, like writing paragraphs, but whether they're pretzel or P or whatever, nobody cares. Right, this is bad news, or is it good news? I like it because it's really simple. If you write 26 words per mark, you'll get the marks on average. Yeah, so whatever grade you're writing at, this holds true, this formula. Every time you write 26 words, not random words, words that are answering the question with explanations, you get a mark. But to get 10 marks, you therefore have to write 260 words. You see how this goes? The exam rewards writing, writing, writing. A fatal flaw that students have is that they worry about how neat their handwriting is. I'm going to be slightly sexist here, just to illustrate a point. Boys are more likely to be messy and go to the too messy end, where then the examiner will go, I just can't read this. So don't go to like where someone couldn't read it. Easy. Give it to your friend, ask your friend, read that out loud to me, please. If they can read it out loud, it's neat enough. And you want to get to a stage where it's as messy as possible, where your friend can still read it out loud. That is ideal for the exam. Why? Because when you're writing messily, you're writing quicker. When you're writing quicker, you're making more points. When you're making more points, you're earning more marks. Okay? So that's the optimal level of messiness. If you're a girl, you're more likely to be very neat in your handwriting, which is more likely to slow your writing down, which is more likely to lead to you making fewer explanations, therefore getting lower marks. Again, you're going to go to a friend and ask them to read it out loud. And you're just going to get as messy as you can where they can still read it. So that advice would work for every single question. In your time limit, write as much as you can. So I never finish a question because I've written a certain number of paragraphs. I finish a question because that's what the clock says. So whatever time limits you've decided for each question, keep those timings. And once you hit that timing, boom, you go to the next question. Most students don't realise that the last marks on a question are hard to get. They're much harder to get than the first marks. So if I'm here on question 2 and I'm running out of time, there's no point spending more time getting those extra marks. It would be much easier to do the first minute of that question where those marks will be easy to find. Yeah, so never overrun on a question. Always guillotine it, whatever your time limit is, and go on to the next, because those first marks are money in the bank. They're easy to get because they're designed for even kids who've done no revision, kids who can barely read, not you. So you'll find those marks easy to pick up. Low-hanging fruit. Brilliant. Okay, when you're writing your explanations, the easiest way to train yourself to do that is to have some words that you always use. And if you always use these words, you will always be explaining, therefore you will always be getting marks. So these words are suggests, implies, reveals, shows, indicates. However, if you only used one of those every single time, the examiner would not get bored. They wouldn't go, oh, this student is so boring. They would just say, aha, explanation coming, mark. Ah, another explanation coming, mark. Yeah? So you don't have to use all of those words. Pick your favourite, or pick your favourite 2, or you might be someone who uses them all. But it doesn't matter. As long as you've got one each time, you will be writing an explanation. Hopefully it will be a decent one that isn't made up rubbish, and therefore you will get the mark. So keep using whichever ones of those words that you like. The killer thing that happens at the start. The examiner has written on the exam paper, spend the first 15 minutes reading. This is insane. Do not, on any account, spend the first 15 minutes reading. It's too long. And also, just try this for yourself at home. Read something for 15 minutes and then get someone to test you on it. You will not remember everything that you read in 15 minutes. Not a chance in hell. And so actually, reading has not helped you remember. It's not helped you for the exam. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go straight in and read the text that question 3 is about, and just that text. And then I'm going to answer question 3. Then I'm going to go and read the next text so that I can answer question 2, comparing them. So whatever you do, do not spend loads of time reading at the beginning, because reading gets you no marks whatsoever. The only marks available are for what you put on the page. So, 10 fatal flaws, which I foolishly called 9, but you didn't spot that, did you? That was my fatal flaw. I'm a cat that's used up all its 9 lives, and on the 10th time, kaput, Mr. Salles. But then I don't really like cats, I'm a dog person. Now, if you want to see my next video about dogs, you can't because I haven't made one. Yes, I have! If you want to see my next video with a picture of a dog on it that also teaches you how to do question 5 of paper 2, check it out now.